Spring practice is about finding the answers to the biggest questions on your roster heading into the next season. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish found some much needed answers. Let's talk about 3 position groups that I think Notre Dame looks a lot better at leaving the spring than I initially anticipated. Ryan Roberts from A to Z Sports breaking down everything Notre Dame football. Folks, spring practice is now officially behind us, and this time of year always seems to drag a little bit. Now we're going to be getting into the summer workout portion, into fall camp. But spring practice is the beginning to finding answers to some of the biggest questions on your roster. And I think Notre Dame began to find those answers. And there's 3 position groups specifically that going into the spring, I was honestly, and both on this channel and at my work at A to Z Sports, we talked about, and I was a little bit worried about, to be honest, to say the absolute least. But now I feel a whole lot more confident. And let's talk about, of course, the biggest question and the biggest position battle and the most important position in all the sports, and that's quarterback. Now, this one's going to sound a little bit weird to some, so stick with me here for a second. Heading into the spring, I loved the talent in the room, that being CJ Carr, Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey, Blake Hebert, so on and so forth. Very talented quarterback room. But there was a little bit of, and I know what some people are thinking already, one, you're now going to have a quarterback that has not had a career start under their belt, starting against Miami in the opener. You also just lost Steve Angeli to the transfer portal. How possibly can you feel better about the room today than you did when you had another talented quarterback in the room? And here's why. And again, stick with me on this one. Going into the spring, I thought there were 2 likely outcomes. One, Steve Angeli wins the starting spot because he's the oldest, most experienced, and the most comfortable option on the board for Notre Dame. The other most likely option is CJ Carr. Obviously, the redshirt freshman, viewed as the golden boy, former borderline 5-star recruit, a guy that Notre Dame fans have been very excited about. The fact that Steve Angeli was beat out, just flat out beat out, not only by CJ Carr, but also by Kenny Minchey, who had a big spring. Redshirt sophomore Kenny Minchey, who was kind of viewed as the wild card going into the spring. Some people are fans, obviously, and I've been very forthcoming on this show that I have hoped that Kenny Minchey gets a great shot at potentially starting to unseat a couple of those guys. But the fact that Steve Angeli has now left the program, that gives me so much hope and optimism for this quarterback position, because that tells me that despite there being a quarterback that had more experience, that had more comfort, time in the system, time with head coach Marcus Freeman, he made a decision because the 2 younger guys were just flat out better than him. And that gives me optimism, whether it ends up being Carr, whether it ends up being Minchey, that this quarterback position is in a great spot. So although you lost one talented quarterback and it depleted, not even the right word, it took a little bit of talent out of the room, I am very optimistic that whoever it ends up being, that this position group is in a much better standing than it was going to the spring. I feel very similarly in my optimism about the safety position. Talked about this a ton recently on this show. But going into the spring, you knew you had Adon Schuler. Jalen Stroman is the veteran transfer from Virginia Tech who was not available in the spring. And you have a bunch of young guys. Jadon Blair, Bronte Johnson, Luke Talich, who's going into his 3rd year. You had a talented but very young and inexperienced group. And I left the spring, I don't even care at this point, whether it is Blair, whether it is Johnson, whether it is Talich, whoever ends up starting, getting Jalen Stroman into this conversation. That room is not a 2 safety starters, small amount of relief opportunities. That is a deep room, one of the deepest rooms, not only on this roster, but I think in any safety room in all of college football. I am so excited about the safety room because I knew it was talented, but would it be ready to play? And I think several of those guys are ready to play today. The tight end room is the last one I want to hit on. And this one I don't feel as confident in because of the sheer numbers and injuries that have been associated with that room. Obviously, Cooper Flanagan dealing with the Achilles injury. Nobody knows his timeline exactly. Eli Raridan is your de facto tight end 1 in the room. And we all know that he has dealt with multiple knee injuries in his past as well. Kevin Bauman is in that room. He's been dealing with a lot of durability concerns during his time at South Bend. There's a lot of injury concerns in that room. But a couple things that gave me optimism. One, Eli Raridan looked really good this spring. He looked like the guy that we potentially thought he was going to be coming out of high school. Looks fully healthy, and I know that it's a hopeful vote, but if he's able to stay healthy, he has a chance to be a breakout player for Notre Dame's offense in 2025. And also the fact that Jack Larson, I thought, took a nice step forward here in the spring. I'm more comfortable with him potentially. You also have Ty Washington, the transfer from Arkansas, coming in the summer. You have James Flanagan coming in the summer. You still have Kevin Bauman in that room. It is dependent upon health, but if that unit stays healthy this fall, and I know that is a big what if, but if that room is able to stay healthy, I'm telling you, that tight end room is going to surprise some folks this year. It's not going to be as much 12 personnel probably as it has been in the past, but it's going to be a much better unit than what I originally anticipated going into the spring. Folks, put in the chat right now, what positions are you excited for? Which positions do you feel better at right now after the spring than you did going in? Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe on the way out. And as always, go Irish.